Niche Tea, where we talk about drama happening in communities you may not be a part of. Last time we talked about the still ongoing situation in the K-pop community that is happening in the administration of HYBE labels, which is the label that owns BTS, specifically between Lillee Jean, who is the CEO of Adore, which is one of the sub-labels under HYBE, and who is the creative director and manager of New Jeans, and the people who are in charge of HYBE at like a corporate level. Latest being that now it's apparently coming out that the HYBE executives have been involved with a cult. Sure, why not? Today we're moving on to what I'm going to call the foodie community because it involves two very primary sub-communities within that, specifically the vegan community and the dairy community. Is there a cheese community? There's gotta be a cheese community. Anyway, we're talking about the Good Food Awards. What are the Good Food Awards? The Good Food Awards is an annual food competition for companies who are based in the US to enter their specific food items into. The competition has been going since 2011 and it is put on by the Good Foods Foundation. The foundation pretty much says the goal of the competition, along with a few other things that they put on, is to platform and highlight very quality foods that follow a very strict set of guidelines that they have laid out. There's a whole list of rules, but basically it needs to be made in America, it needs to be ethically sourced, everything needs to be very high quality, it has to taste good, and it has to be sustainably manufactured. And from what I can see, the award is fairly prestigious. It is something that, for example, a small business would very much want to win to be able to show off that they have a very quality product, which could be monumental depending on the size of the business for securing retail deals. One last thing is that the categories within the competition are for what I would call like base grocery food. So beer, cider, coffee, preserves, cheese, honey, not full completed meals. So what happened? The way the competition is done is a series of judges are selected for each category based on their expertise levels for that particular type of food. Then each of the entrants is blinded, so none of the judges know exactly who's whatever they're eating or trying at that particular point. Those judges then select a list of finalists, and I believe a winner at the same time. The finalists are released as like an announcement in January, but I don't believe there is a second round of judging after the fact. But even being a finalist is fantastic. Again, the purpose of this is to highlight quality food products. So even if you are not a winner, but are a finalist in a particular category, that can be very valuable for you as a brand. It seems then that the winners are sent a separate notification after the finalists are announced to say, hey, you won, so that they can then schedule time to come out and go to an official ceremony and receive an award and do the whole thing. Well, something happened this year that it seems has never happened before, and that was specifically within the cheese category. A cheese made it onto the finalist list, which was vegan. And turns out they won. The very aggressively named Climax Foods came in first with their blue cheese, which I've actually been able to find a good amount of press surrounding both Climax Foods and this particular cheese going back through 2023. Now, I haven't tried it, as I don't like blue cheese, but from what I can see, it is apparently very good and very, very similar to dairy cheese. It seems like the general goal that Climax Foods as a brand has is to utilize data and science to the best of their ability to make plant-based foods, which is as indistinguishable as possible from non-plant-based. And apparently they've done a very good job. Now, this cheese showing up in the finalist list in January already sparked a huge buzz. Even not knowing that they had won, vegan cheese has never made it into the finalists for this competition ever. And I don't think that's too surprising. Vegan cheese has always been kind of a hard thing to get. Like, I know vegans who just straight up just say don't do cheese because vegan cheese is just not it. So even this alone was like, holy shit. And traditional cheesemakers were all over this. Pretty much everyone that I can find was saying that it's not really cheese and it needs to be in its own category. Even people who are trying to, it seems, come off as nice were still saying it needs to be in its own category, which, I mean, I haven't been tracking this for a long time, but did anyone care until it got good enough to compete with traditional cheese? Maybe they did, I'm just saying. Eventually it seemed to die down because, again, only Climax Foods knew that they had won. I'm sure they were expecting probably another round of grief after they accepted their awards at the award show, which is tonight, the 29th. However, the founder and CEO of Climax Foods is a man named Oliver Zahn, and he and his team were planning on going to Portland, Oregon tonight for the finalist ceremony because, again, they were notified in January that they had won. Until what had to have been at most 1 week ago from today, the actual award ceremony, he found out from a reporter that his cheese was no longer listed on the finalist list on the website. And then by following up, he found out that they had been disqualified. You don't say. People then asked the director, Sarah Weiner, of the Good Foods Foundation why Climax was disqualified, and she initially didn't want to say. But she then admitted that someone who shall remain anonymous, it could have been another contestant, it could have been literally anybody, brought forth a specific complaint about Climax's cheese, claiming that it didn't meet the requirements for entry. She claims this has nothing to do with like Big Dairy coming for the vegan cheese that's doing well finally, and rather it has to do with the fact that simply more people were aware of this particular vegan cheese being on the finalist list because that hasn't happened before. And so because of that, there was a higher likelihood that someone would be intimately familiar with the process and be able to flag if something was wrong. While sloppy, because in my opinion, any of this should have been reviewed at the time of entry, not after you announce the finalists, I could maybe get behind that, except the reason that she gives for why the cheese was ultimately disqualified is related to a specific ingredient it has, namely kokum butter. The reason there's an issue with the kokum butter is because this is not classified as what's called GRAS, generally regarded as safe, by the FDA. And if you look at the contest rules on their website, you could see under Rule 6 that it does say that if there are any uncommon ingredients that are included in your recipe, they do need to have that GRAS qualification from the FDA. Common ingredients don't, because there are some very common ingredients which don't have it for some reason. Funny thing about that though, if you go to the Wayback Machine and look at that exact same page in January, when the finalists were announced, that clause isn't there. Weird. Weiner admits that that wasn't there, but says that it has always been a rule and that they were just solidifying it, which cool, do it next year. Weiner also says that the Climax cheese violates the rule that any cheese entered must be ready for retail. I don't know exactly what the specifics of what that means are, and I would hope that that's outlined somewhere, but the CEO of Climax Foods claims that it is retail ready. On top of that, he says that even if the generally regarded as safe parameter is an official rule now, his cheese still shouldn't be excluded because it doesn't actually use kokum butter anymore, and it hasn't. It uses cocoa butter, which is generally regarded as safe. And he does specifically say that the new recipe was the one that was entered into the competition. Weiner claims that their ingredients list still includes kokum butter, but I haven't seen anybody this is what we sent. Here's the email and here's the list. And on top of all of this, Zahn, the Climax Foods CEO, claims that no one reached out to him about any of these issues. He would have been happy to clear them up. Weiner claims that they did reach out and that the Climax team had a specific set of time to respond, and they didn't meet that deadline or respond at all, probably because it sounds like they never got it. Weiner claims that her team reached out to the person on the Climax Foods team who entered the brie into the competition in the first place. But since it had been 6 months, apparently that person no longer worked at Climax Foods, which apparently Weiner claims her team didn't realize. I feel like you would have gotten an undeliverable notification for their email, but okay. Weiner then claims they emailed another employee and got no response. I understand that people are busy. I understand that everyone has tons of shit going on, that they're all juggling both at work and at home and all this stuff. I also get that if you enter into a contest, you should be paying as much attention as possible to potential communications from the organizers of that contest. However, there's no way there wasn't a list of company representatives, including the CEO himself, on the application for this contest. And simply given the special circumstances surrounding this, you have someone you have already notified that they've won. They are a first of their kind winner in this type of category. This is a big deal. You can go out of your way to make sure you get in contact with them for this type of thing. Because to me, this is very reminiscent of the Hugo Awards. Obviously, I don't work in this industry. I don't do anything food related. My opinion means fuck all. But from a completely outsider perspective, this hurts the brand of the Good Food Foundation a lot. I have no idea if this is going to be a big piece of news that gets around or if it's literally just going to disappear. But I come out of this thinking way less of them as an organization. And I'm not at all convinced by their response that this decision was not the result of them caving to outside pressures that didn't want a vegan cheese to win this award, which is truly insane to say, but there's money associated with it, and that's why I believe it. I absolutely agree with Zahn that this is incredibly embarrassing for the organization and for Weiner herself. I guess we'll see tonight who wins. Hello and welcome back to Niche Tea, where we talk about drama happening in communities you may not be a part of. Last time we talked about the vegan/dairy community and specifically the discord around the most recent round of the Good Food Awards for 2024. Today we're moving over to the beauty community and we're talking about something that you may have heard a little bit about so far that's been going on with a brand called Youthforia. Youthforia is a makeup brand. It's a small business which was started by a woman named Fiona Ko-Chan during the pandemic. The brand's differentiation point is that it considers makeup an extension of skincare. So their goal is to create makeup which is actively healthy for your skin, not something your skin has to necessarily recover from. They commonly promote it as makeup you can sleep in and also claim that that's part of their testing process in-house. And in only a few years since it launched, the brand has done really, really well. They've gotten 3 rounds of funding. In 2023, they were valued at $5 million and is probably a good amount higher than that now. The brand secured a retail distribution deal with Ulta, and reportedly since that initial deal, their footprint in-store, the amount of space that they take up, has doubled. And overall in 2023, they tripled their retail sales compared to 2022. So this is a brand that not only had a really strong start, but is very well positioned to continue growing into the future. Now, separately, something that's generally a big point of conversation within the beauty makeup space has to do with the variety and diversity of skin tones when it comes to skin products. Think like foundation and concealer. Namely, as you might imagine, there's very much a bias toward lighter skin shades when it comes to what brands are actually manufacturing and stocking. And this has certainly gotten better over time, especially with Fenty Beauty coming on the scene. But even so, a lot of brands just really aren't stepping up the way consumers are coming to expect. You'll see situations where there's 30 or more shades in a foundation range, but only 5 of them are for actually deep skin tones. So the primary set of people who have been asking for more diversity so that they can get what they need are still not getting what they need. And while, yeah, if brands like Fenty exist and so there are some options, it's not just like a check, we did it once, therefore we don't need it again. No, the expectation is that this is now the baseline, and brands really just aren't living up to that in a lot of cases. Also, it is a little insane that multi-million-dollar makeup companies failed at this for so long that Black women had to come in and be like,
fine, I'll do it myself.
Which isn't to say that there aren't any non-Black owned businesses which are doing it correctly. It's just a lot less common. So, what happened? Last fall, Youthforia ran into this same problem. They released the Date Night Skin Tint Serum Foundation, again with the benefit that you could put it on, it had medium buildable coverage, and that you could leave it on, you didn't have to take it off. And they had 15 shades. And the shades they did have leaned very light, and this became immediately apparent for a whole host of beauty influencers who weren't able to find a shade that would work for them at all. And people were pretty quick to give them that feedback, like, hey, we understand that you're a small business and it is harder for you guys to create these like massive shade ranges from the get-go, but this is not really what we would call acceptable. Generally going forward, you need to be including more of a diversity in your shade ranges from the get-go. Now, Fiona responded to that with a TikTok video basically saying, yeah, this was like a prototype launch. We were just trying to make sure that people like the actual formula, and we always planned on doing more, so don't worry. And she says she's just run into issues in the past where she's done like full extensive launches of a product and then that product failed and it put her more in the hole. So she wanted to do like a soft launch to make sure it wasn't gonna flop before she did the full rollout with all of the shades. She got some side after that, but people pretty much moved on. Cut to 2023, Youthforia announces that they will be coming out with a full shade range for the foundation because it's done really well and people really love it. And so they'll be adding 10 shades to the shade range as it currently exists. So that brings us up to 25. Now, pretty immediately, people were like, these still lean pretty light, even within the darker ranges. There are only actually 5 that would be considered deep. But pretty quickly, people also picked up that one of the shades, the very darkest shade, was like really dark, which on its surface sounds like it could be good. However, a beauty influencer on TikTok named Gloria had tried the previous Youthforia foundation shade ranges, and their deepest shade was nowhere near a match to her skin tone. So she was very excited to try these deeper shades. Very quickly though, she realized that this deepest shade range that they have was quite simply just black, like straight black. Nothing else, just black. She then makes a video, which is currently sitting at 25 million views, where she has 2 swatches on her face and she says, which one of these is the Youthforia foundation and which one is black face paint? And you genuinely can't tell, because that's what it is. People have gone through the formulation of it. It has no undertones to it at all. This makes it functionally unusable. No one has actual pure unfiltered black skin, which is immediately what people started commenting. In addition to what a complete slap in the face this felt like you got 5 deep shades and this is one of them. I saw someone's tweet saying that this was basically Youthforia going, fine, you want it here. Are you happy now? And I kind of have to agree, because I also have yet to see a single person say, hi, this foundation is actually perfect for me. And even in their own behind the scenes videos, Youthforia showed that they even had a super hard time finding anybody who could model this shade. Now, one thing people started bringing up was that it's a mixing foundation. Like the goal of it was to say, we aren't in a position as a brand, Youthforia, to produce every single possible shade range. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna make the ones we think for whatever reason are most demanded or most needed. And then we'll add this very, very dark one because that way you can use it as a mixer to help blend the other shades down into the shade that you need, which could work. But two things. One, if that were done in good faith, I would think that there would be a white and a black and then a very even distribution of shades between that. It still leans very heavily toward light foundations, and you're telling basically Black people, fix it yourself, figure it out. But two, and more importantly, remember how I said that it's a straight black and it has nothing else in it? The fact that it doesn't have an undertone, according to basic color theory, as I've learned pretty extensively over the last few days, means that it will not mix well into any other foundation to create an actual new foundation color. It's turning everything gray. So the approach in terms of the product still doesn't make any sense, even if it is a mixer. And not for nothing, it's not marketed as a mixing foundation. Most of the time, my understanding is when that's the case and something is for mixing purposes, the brands are very clear about that in the labeling and description. There doesn't seem to yet be a follow-up response from Youthforia or Fiona specifically. I've seen some offhanded comments that Ulta may not stock the black shade, but they do have it available on their website, at least currently. So I don't know if that's an in-store thing or not, and they haven't said anything official that I can find about it. Outside of expressing the very understandable frustration that we are still facing this type of thing in 2024, people are using this as a good opportunity to highlight brands, primarily Black-owned brands, that do have very inclusive and extensive shade ranges for people with darker skin. I'll include some screenshots of a very prominent thread that is getting a lot of traction right now on Twitter that is highlighting some of these brands. So in case you are looking for something new, maybe you can find something that you haven't tried before here. If you have any brands that you love and have really good diverse ranges, please shout them out so people can try them. I am ill-equipped in almost any conceivable way to meaningfully contribute to the conversation, but I am happy to provide a platform. Hopefully we will hear from Youthforia soon, and hopefully it will be an acknowledgement of the misstep that this was and an action plan for how they plan to fix it. Currently, they're just limiting comments and seem to be hyping up positive responses to their stuff on their pages. I do think it's pretty funny though. I was looking through the comments on Instagram, and whoever is managing their Instagram social interactions is probably using a third-party app, because I'm seeing situations where they clearly think that the comment they're responding to is one that's hyping them up, and it is not doing that, and they look very silly. Anyway, makeup brands, let's all learn from this, shall we? Hello and welcome back to Niche Tea, where we talk about drama happening in communities you may not be a part of. Last time we talked about the beauty community, specifically the brand Youthforia coming out with a pure, unfiltered black foundation, which is a choice. Today we're going back over to the gaming space, and specifically we're talking about a situation where the voice of the people actually made a difference, so I really wanted to cover it. We're talking about Helldivers 2. Helldivers 2 is a PlayStation game which was released in February of this year. It's what's called a cooperative third-person shooter. Cooperative meaning there is no PvP in the game. You meet up with other people online and create squads and play against the game itself. And third person simply refers to the point of view that the camera takes throughout the game. So a first-person shooter is where the point of view is from the eyes of the person shooting. So those are the ones where you see the gun like in front of you, hovering as you run around. Whereas with a third-person shooter, you're basically Lakitu from the Mario games, following your guy around. And so you're looking at him, but still controlling him. Now, generally, as a rule, I don't feel like I hear that much about cooperative games compared to PvP games. Because as you might expect, when you have people playing against each other, that's where a lot of the toxicity comes from. But these games aren't like that. And on top of that, by all accounts, this game is really, really good. And yet, in the 3 months that this game has been out, there have already been multiple like major kerfuffles within the community that people have been tagging me in and I've been tracking. Some of my favorites being that when some people complained about some of the updates that were made to the game on Reddit, the devs came into the Reddit and told them it was a skill issue. And there was a whole fight on Twitter as to whether or not the game is satirical when it is quite literally just a video game adaptation of Starship Troopers. Like, you play as humans from a future super Earth that is ruled by a managed democracy where no one actually votes, and if you want to vote, that is considered treasonous. Like, even just asking for there to be voting is considered treasonous. And you're fighting a bunch of enemy races as part of this like great war for Earth. But there are even apparently missions where you're supposed to stop treasonous transmissions from going through, and then at least some of them are about the fact that it's not a real war and it's made up by the government and it's just an excuse for them to go and pillage all the resources from these planets where these other races probably already live. No, you're playing the good guys, of course. So all to say, there's just been a lot going on with it, even in just the short time since it's come out. But the response to this made all of that look like nothing in comparison. So what happened? As I mentioned before, Helldivers 2 is a Sony game, so it's able to be played on the PlayStation or on your PC through Steam. Because this is a game where you connect with others online to play together, if you're playing on a PS5, you need what's called a PlayStation Network or PSN account. This is a little annoying, but for people who play on console primarily, this is something they're very much used to and very likely probably already have. Sony has been pushing it for a very long time, and it is free to make. However, and my understanding is this is generally true, you do not need a PSN account to play Sony PlayStation games on PC. You can either connect with your friends directly or you can connect with random other players through Steam, which is the platform that the game is sold through. Well, last week, Sony came out and said, hey girlies, I know that we said before that you didn't need to have a PSN account to play on PC, but you know it'd be so fun, we were just talking about it. What if you did though? And they announced that within days, they were going to be requiring any new accounts that play on PC who want to start playing the game have to have a PSN account, and any old accounts would have to be migrated over to ones with PSN account, like you'd have to add a PSN to it by the end of this month. Sony went on to say that this was always the plan, and the only reason this wasn't a requirement at launch was because of technical issues that they were facing on their side, and they had to let it go. And they referred to this new change as the expiration of that grace period. This did not go over well. To say that people were upset would be like saying Hereditary was a little dark. And if you're looking at this purely from the outside, your initial instinct is to roll your eyes a bit. Like, oh, you have to make an extra account that's free and then link them, and then you can keep playing just like you always did. Oh, I'm sorry. But that's not it. Yes, it's annoying and it's purely self-serving for Sony, so it's like, but it goes beyond that. There are two primary issues, the smaller of which being that the PlayStation Network does not have great security. Sony as an organization has had their data breached and leaked a number of different times in different ways over the last number of years, but to be fair to them, the last major breach of the PlayStation Network specifically was in 2011, so it has been a minute. But in order to open a PSN account, you do need to give them your full name, address, and date of birth, and that's not information people want to just be throwing around these days. But the significantly bigger issue is that Helldivers 2 was rolled out globally and has a very active global user base. And there are roughly 170 countries that cannot get a PlayStation Network account at all. And on top of that, there are countries that even though Sony says, yes, you can have a PSN account if you live here, the laws of those countries prevent their citizens from making a PSN account. For example, Russia and China. So anyone who played in any of the countries on this list, Russia, China, and anywhere else that might restrict them from having a PSN account can no longer play this game, a game that they paid for. Now on the Helldivers side, there are three main players in this. There's Arrowhead, which is the actual developer, the company that made the game. There's Sony, they're the publisher of the game, so it's a Sony game made by Arrowhead. And then we have Steam, which is a publisher platform for PC specifically. Like I said before, if you're playing on PC, you buy it on Steam. So because the PC players bought it through Steam, Steam's response to this announcement from Sony was to say, we're ignoring our standard return policy for video games, where if you buy a game through Steam, you can only have played it a certain number of hours and then still return it. Like you can't play it consecutively for 3 weeks and then return it after the fact. You have to have it under a certain number of hours, meaning like you knew you didn't like it and then return it, and they completely disregarded that. They're like, look, if you want to return Helldivers, do it. In terms of social conversation, people were pretty evenly directing their ire at both Sony and Arrowhead, trying to understand, like, how did we get to this? The Arrowhead CEO was pretty well engaged on Twitter, discussing with fans what was going on and what their position was. And he did confirm what Sony said in their official statement, that this was always the plan. The game was set to release on PC with the PSN account requirement. It just exploded, is the term I keep hearing. It wasn't working for one reason or another, and they had to disable it. Otherwise, it would have very detrimentally affected the game itself. He went on to claim that it has always been listed as a requirement on the Steam page. It just hasn't been a thing that they've been enforcing. Though I've seen people take screenshots that show that that may not actually be the case. So I'm not totally sure there. He was then asked why, if this was always the plan, Did you sell this in countries where you knew they couldn't get a PSN account? And that, as he responded, is very solely on Sony. They're the ones who decide as the publisher where it gets published to. He also indicated there was still ongoing conversation both within Arrowhead and with Sony as a result of this backlash. And Discord screenshots started to circulate of alleged Arrowhead devs specifically coming out in support of the players. One of those screenshots was of a community manager at Arrowhead named Spitz. In it, he says if players want any real chance of having Sony change their minds on this, they have to be mass refunding the game and review bombing it in Steam. And review bomb it they did. Players went on what I would call one of the biggest review bomb campaigns of all time. Truly insane and clearly heartbreaking to the Arrowhead team. Reminder, this had a hugely positive review rating before. And initially it seemed like the players weren't going to get anywhere anyway, because on Monday, Sony came out and restricted the game from being bought in any of those countries that couldn't get a PSN account. But this may have been part of the plan that they already had in place, which was supposed to officially go live as of the 6th anyway, because quite literally later in that same day, after 200,000 negative reviews on Steam, Sony threw their hands up. He said, "We heard you. Thank you for your feedback, as you were." Well done. And while things like review bombing are obviously not ideal, it puts Arrowhead in the middle. They're the ones getting hit the hardest when really they didn't do anything wrong. Consumers these days are really limited in what their options are when it comes to making a huge corporation like Sony listen to them. So I'm happy that we got to that point where they were able to enact change. And I do have to say, it was actually really heartwarming to see the messages of support of the community within itself. This was not a bunch of people going at the computer. This was people saying, "We are one, we are together, these are my friends and I'm playing with them or I'm not playing at all." It was actually really cute. I liked it a lot. It was a good sentiment. Actually, look up on TikTok, somebody made an edit of the end of Infinity War, but like made it for Helldivers 2. Look it up, it's absolutely devastating. These people care about each other. Now, everyone's happy, obviously, but twist, that Arrowhead community manager I mentioned earlier, the one who encouraged the review bombing, has been let go from Arrowhead, allegedly as a direct result of encouraging the review bombing, which of course people are not happy about, even though he himself is basically like, "Yeah, I had a feeling this would probably happen, but worth it." King shit, honestly. I don't know if anything specific is going to happen there. It's a hard sell to get his job back after that. But this is a good point to say, if you were one of those people who review bombed, now that you got what you wanted, you have to go back and change the review back. It's like with kids, you have to reward good behavior. Otherwise, they won't do what you want next time you do it. I'm joking, but like, I'm also serious. It won't work again otherwise. Hello and welcome back to Niche Tea, where we talk about drama happening in communities you may not be a part of. Last time we talked about what I'm hoping is still a W for the gaming community over corporations, specifically the Helldivers 2 community pushing back against new regulations from Sony, which would prevent roughly 1/3 of their player base from continuing to play the game. As of filming, Sony has made an official announcement on Twitter saying that they will not be moving forward with these changes, which would have prevented all of these people from playing. However, they've limited the game's ability to be downloaded in all of those countries that would have lost access. So what are we doing here? Today we're moving back into the K-pop community to talk about something that does have shitty elements to it, which is kind of what the tea is. But as a whole, there's so many funny and happy elements to it that I just felt like I needed to talk about it. Talking about Stray Kids at the Met Gala. Starting off, who is Stray Kids? Stray Kids is a 4th generation K-pop group under JYP Entertainment. They are 4th generation because they debuted in 2018. The generations, when you hear people say 2nd gen, 3rd gen, it really just refers to when the group debuted. The group was formed as the result of a reality show that ran in 2017, and that is actually not uncommon. Even beyond the temporary girl groups that you may have heard of from shows like Produce 101 might sound familiar, those reality shows traditionally take trainees from a bunch of different agencies, plus like individual people sometimes will apply and get through. And then the top trainees per fan voting at the end of those shows create temporary groups. Those groups exist for a few years, but because all of the trainees came from different agencies, that group has to be temporary, and then they go back to their original agency and usually re-debut in some other way afterward. But in addition to those types of shows, there are other so-called survival shows where a permanent group is going to be formed. In order for this to work, there's pretty much 2 different types of situations that have to happen. The first way is that whatever company or agency is doing it makes it an open audition to anyone, but in order for you to come and participate, you have to leave any existing agency relationship you already have elsewhere. So that way you are in a position to be able to sign a permanent contract when you come to work with them if you win. The other way that this works is if the company that is producing the survival show has enough trainees within the agency to be able to do a survival show of their own trainees. And this is how Stray Kids was formed. JY Park, the CEO of JYP Entertainment, seems to really love survival shows. He just cannot stop doing them. Off the top of my head, I can think of at least 4 he's done in the last 10 years alone. Arguably most successfully was in 2015 when he produced a show called 16 with the goal of creating a 7-member girl group, but then ended up creating a 9-member girl group called Twice. But then in 2017, there were rumors that 16 season 2 was going to be coming out with a male group, and a bunch of stuff went back and forth, and it ended up being the Project Stray Kids. This one was a little different because in 16, there were individual trainees who were all competing to be in what would be Twice. However, with the Stray Kids show, it was the team already formed as a unit competing against JYP basically to prove to him that they were ready to debut. And I like that format a lot because it gives you all the entertainment and drama of a traditional survival show with a lot less of the stress of your fave getting cut. He will cut people throughout these shows based on how they perform and how he sees the final group coming together. But he's pretty well known for letting people back in the groups if they're popular enough, because ultimately he knows the goal is to make a group that he can sell, and if he's cutting those popular members, that's not gonna work. I distinctly remember him telling a 15-year-old Chewy who had been standing under bright lights for like 2.5 hours on a live broadcast of the 16 finale, "You're really not good, and you're really not ready to be in this group, and if it were up to me, you would not be in this group, but people really like you, so I'm letting you in." I have qualms with this man. Anyway, that's enough history. Stray Kids has gone on to be phenomenally successful alongside their sister group Twice. I would say if we're like ranking groups, obviously Blackpink and BTS are very much at this higher echelon that's above anything else in the industry. But outside of those two, I would say in my estimation, you've got Twice and Stray Kids right at the top of that pile when it comes to total global popularity. If you're interested in checking out Stray Kids, the songs I recommend you start with would be Backdoor, Miro, and Maniac. That's my personal recommendation, obviously. Do not start with God's Menu. People are going to tell you to start with God's Menu because they love it, because they've been listening to Stray Kids for years. You cannot go from 0 to God's Menu. Really quick, before I keep going, I know you may be seeing a lot of these and you may be fatigued at this point, and I apologize if so. But like many other creators, I am partnering with Operation Olive Branch to help a family that is desperately in need in Gaza. There is a link in my bio which goes to their GoFundMe. I know it seems like a lot of money. This is a 20-person family covering 3 generations, and 10 of them are kids. And this money is purely to get them somewhere safe. Regardless of how you feel about this conflict, these are innocent human beings who do desperately need our help. If there is any way that you can contribute anything, that would be amazing. No amount is too small. And if you can't contribute, I completely understand. I'd appreciate signal boosting in any way you feel comfortable. So, what happened? This past Monday, May 6th, was the Met Gala, and Stray Kids attended. They are actually the first K-pop group to collectively attend a Met Gala, so that was pretty cool. They were not on theme, but they did look good, and a lot of things happened. On the funny side, they were dressed by Tommy Hilfiger, and the group with Tommy did an interview with a reporter as part of the event, where Tommy spoiled that they were going to have a 40-city tour in the coming months, year, I don't know. At first I thought, oh, maybe he was supposed to say that. Maybe it was like how they were supposed to announce it. And then I saw pictures of the members' faces, and I don't think so. Tommy might have gotten a call from JYP on that one. Felix got a ton of attention, which he always does. He looks great blonde, and the braids and the styling, it was a little bit more on theme than the rest of the group, even though the outfits weren't on theme, and he just looks good. Usually the focus for him is his voice, and if you're not sure what I mean by that, do a search on TikTok for the Felix effect. Hyunjin got some fun call-outs for looking like Yuji Itadori, the main character of Jujutsu Kaisen, when he had his jacket on. They looked great. They did a great job.
Don't want to eat candy.
But the parasites in me want the candy.
I don't want to drink liquor. I don't like liquor.
But the parasite, the demon in me, it wants the...
But as with these events, there's not just photos, there's video. People like to see people actually walking through and seeing how they act. As idols, they do these types of things a lot in totally different types of environments, so they know what they're doing. Felix is quite literally a runway model. But culturally in Korea, and especially when it comes to idols, it's just much more subdued than it would be in America. This, to me, is a non-issue. They showed up, they posed, they didn't block each other, they took off their coats together, they posed again, and then they headed out. What's the problem? However, the video showing Stray Kids walking through caught a lot of audio of the photographers frankly just negging them because they weren't being playful and talkative, I guess. I don't understand why they were so upset about this, but they were constantly talking shit about the fact that Stray Kids was being too stoic for them. Throughout the entire clip, they sounded honestly like a bunch of high schoolers. It was embarrassing to listen to. They very clearly didn't think any of them could speak English, and guess what? The leader, Bang Chan, literally grew up in Australia, and you can see how pissed he is. You can see him reach his limit with it, and he claps his hands and they roll out efficiently. And as they're walking away, you can hear one of the photographers yell, "How do you say thank you in Korean? Oh, arigato." No, whether that was a joke or not, you are gross and you should be embarrassed. This is where we hit the find out part of the story. People underestimating the dedication and love of K-pop fandoms will continue to be something that fascinates me, probably for the next 10 years at least, because it just keeps happening. And the thing about this is that this was an attack from the outside, and nothing unites people like an attack from the outside. Stray Kids' official fandom name is Stays, and Stays were absolutely mad. So was everyone else. Fandoms are all so used to the absolutely abhorrent treatment these groups get when they come to the West, especially to the US, and they are so sick of it. Everyone came together to give their support to Stray Kids on this one, because they also knew that Stray Kids can't come out and say, hey, this is fucked. Though BM from Card did speak on this, reaffirming why I love them so goddamn much. BM, if you see this, please do another US tour. However, as it was their own personal honor which had been defiled, Stays took the lead and found the alleged main photographer who was talking shit at the boys within like a day. From there, they found his IG, which instantly made him have to go private. And then from his IG, they found his personal website, which was promptly hacked. I don't know exactly what it was before, but as of right now, it's just flat gray with a bolded message from Stays to the photographer. And the message keeps updating. Like every time I go back to it, it's a little different. I know you shouldn't do this stuff, but like, this is really funny. There's also a change.org petition to demand an apology from him that's currently at nearly 1,600 signatures. And people are actively looking to find the other photographers who were in that area who they think might have said things. And I've seen at least one photographer proactively come out and say, look, I was standing around these people, but I did not say anything disrespectful. I would not do that. I haven't seen if there's camera angle from the other side so you could see exactly who's speaking, so I don't know. Hopefully the message did get across though, because this truly was incredibly disrespectful and unprofessional of them. These are human beings. They're not puppets. They're not here to perform for you in this environment just because they are entertainers. They don't deserve less respect because they're a boy band. They don't deserve less respect because they're not from America. Hopefully this sends the right message for future interactions of this kind. Not just for K-pop idols, anyone. No one deserves to be treated like that, celebrity or not. Hello and welcome back to Niche Tea, where we talk about drama happening in communities you may not be a part of. Thank you for being patient while I was gone for a bit. We are back. Last time we talked about the K-pop community, specifically the very unified backlash a number of photographers faced after they were incredibly rude to Stray Kids at the event. Today we're going to talk about something that happened while I was kind of on my hiatus, but I was kind of keeping track of it as it was going, and that is happening in the glitter community. Specifically a back and forth that recently happened between the Slayfire Cosmetics brand and a creator named Face Candy Jenna. Quick background, as I mentioned, Slayfire is a cosmetics brand. They have their own website and a bunch of different products, but they are very well known for their glitters specifically. Most specifically, their glitter gels. They have sizable followings on both TikTok as well as Instagram and utilize both platforms for marketing purposes pretty heavily, which would make sense. And I do believe the owner is directly behind most, if not all, of the content being put out on both of these platforms, as well as most of the back and forth communication with individual customers, and is a queer woman of color. Face Candy Jenna, or just Jenna, is a face painter who has 2.4 million subscribers on TikTok and another 30,000 on Instagram. As you might expect, given her profession, she does post a lot of content relating to face painting. That includes her actually doing work, face painting work for clients who are predominantly children. Her platform is very child friendly, but she also likes to talk about makeup, both for face painting purposes, like would I use this on a client, especially if it's a child who has sensory issues, as well as just for herself. She herself is someone who has sensory issues she says she has to work around, and specifically there are areas like glitter where that can be really difficult. So she's constantly on the lookout and doing reviews of new brands with different types of glitter, especially if it is professed to be sensory friendly, because she's always interested in seeing if there's something that she can use that she hasn't had the ability to use thus far, either for herself or for the clients she works with. Though supposedly she's really had a hard time with this specifically for glitter because of her own sensory sensitivities. So she ended up making her own glitter as well. She calls it a glitter cream, and she does sell these, though it doesn't appear that it is her primary source of income. It's not heavily promoted on her channel. One last thing I want to say, both of these creators have a history of liking to tussle. I found a smattering of things for both of them over the years about how they are a little rude sometimes and a little combative. They're also very 10 toes down, stand behind what you mean, like not the type to give up on things, and I think that plays very heavily into what happened between them recently. Before I go any further, I want to quickly say thank you so much to everyone who has contributed to the GoFundMe that I have been supporting. We have reached our goal way faster than I thought it would even be possible, and I am truly blown away by everyone's generosity and willingness to contribute to this. Thank you so much. I have been working with Pass the Hat and Operation Olive Branch. I am hoping to be reassigned to another family shortly. I know people have been saying you can just go in and pick another family from the spreadsheet. I went in, but like the GoFundMes aren't linked in the spreadsheet. And I really want to make sure to pick one correctly from the spreadsheet, because those are the ones that Operation Olive Branch has painstakingly vetted, and that is the benefit of being able to work with them. So instead, I picked one that already has been assigned, because then I know that creator has that link. The one that I picked is being supported by Colleen, and Colleen is supporting another very large fundraiser for a full team of artists and their families, a total of 15 people. These artists started their own studio in the last few years, and since this has begun, their studio has been fully destroyed, their homes have been fully destroyed, and one of them is unfortunately missing. If you think you might be able to help, you can easily get to the link through Colleen's profile. I've linked them below. Thank you so much to anyone who considers this. We've done a lot, and I'm so grateful, and the more we do, the more we can help. So, what happened? I've tried to film this so many times. I keep running up on time because there's so many details, so I'm gonna have to like high level stuff. A few weeks ago, Slayfire posted a video to their tomfoolery playlist, which is one where they get a little combative, a little sassy. In this case, they were filling a palette while telling a story about working with a creator who tried to gatekeep sensory issues. They're talking about Jenna. The way they claim it happened is that Jenna liked one of their other products, and then they mentioned that they have sensory-friendly glitters. Jenna was like, oh cool, I would love to see that, and we'll see how they do, or said something like that, which they thought was weird. Then the video got posted, and Jenna didn't like it at all, specifically from a sensory-friendly standpoint. Slayfire says this is because Jenna didn't put the product on correctly. She like wiped it on instead of tapping it on, which I assume would make the gel pull more. Slayfire says they tried to give tips and comments, but that caused a bit of a back and forth, so they just deleted their comments and just said thank you, and then they DM'd Jenna separately and just said, hey, sorry, I wasn't trying to come off as combative. I do think this makes a difference, but I'm sorry it didn't work for you, etc. And they both kind of just said, good luck, you know, no hard feelings. But then according to Slayfire, Jenna came back the next day and accused Slayfire of using low-grade glitter, and then said, you can't call this sensory-friendly because it didn't work for me, so it's obviously not. And when Slayfire pushed back on that, saying that different people have different sensitivities, that Jenna then accused them of unethical marketing and blocked them. Then the next week, Jenna posted a glowing review of a different brand of glitter and threw shade again at Slayfire in that video. Now, Slayfire did not name Jenna in this video, but very quickly people figured out it was about her, and the video got like 2 million views plus, so people started making their way over to Jenna's profile and giving her grief. Then a few days later, Jenna posted a response. Again, key points only. Jenna says that before any of this, Slayfire came to her and asked her about marketing their existing glitters that weren't made to be sensory-friendly, but got a lot of positive reviews from people who needed sensory-friendly stuff as sensory-friendly. Like, oh, clearly people think they are, so why don't I go ahead and market it that way? Jenna said she loved the first product she got from Slayfire and that she really wanted the glitters to work for her. She has a really hard time finding glitters that work for her, so she was really excited to give it a try. She said she didn't really put it on wrong because she patted the one side that was the initial try, and once she knew she didn't like it, she was trying the other side just quickly, and that's why she rubbed it on, but also that she doesn't think that there should be a specific way you have to put it on for it to be sensory friendly. She apologizes for making it seem like she's the, you know, arbiter of what is and is not sensory friendly, but does clarify that her initial review does not say anything blanket like that. She very specifically says, this doesn't work for me. And I went back and watched it, and that is true. She's pretty specific about saying, like, this is a me thing, and for me, this doesn't work, and she even says you should try it for yourself at the end. And she claims she hasn't said anything else about it publicly. Those DMs wouldn't have been revealed if it weren't for Slayfire actually showing people those. And those are the only ones where she says flat out, you shouldn't market this as sensory friendly. They're not. She says as far as that statement goes, she means that yes, if something is to be marketed as sensory friendly, it should be sensory friendly to everyone, which seems like just a basic disconnect in what the term friendly means between these two people. And I do think most people would probably lean Slayfire's direction on that. Friendly doesn't mean proof. So if it does work for a decent number of people who have sensory sensitivities, I think it makes sense to call it sensory friendly. She says and does show that the reason she initially reached out to Slayfire after their first exchange in DMs was because she was concerned that someone had given Slayfire non-cosmetic grade glitter and claimed that it was cosmetic grade. She says that as someone who's worked with glitters of all different kinds for over a decade and has made their own glitter, she knows what cosmetic grade feels like, and Slayfire's does not feel cosmetic grade to her. And so she claims she reached out because she thought Slayfire was getting scammed by their supplier and wanted to connect Slayfire to her own supplier. And she was comparing Slayfire's to her glitters specifically because she knows her glitters don't have that same grainy feel that she felt with Slayfire's. And then so according to Jenna, she felt she was bringing a serious safety issue to Slayfire's attention, and that Slayfire was being very polite but being very dismissive. So then Jenna's thinking, oh, okay, well, Slayfire doesn't care if it's a safety hazard to people, and then on top of that is marketing it as sensory friendly, which is a community I'm a part of and fairly protective of because they are constantly sold things that aren't actually sensory friendly. So on top of all of this, you're giving them something that, in my opinion, is not sensory friendly and is also unsafe, which then led to the accusation of unethical marketing and the blocking. Jenna wraps it up by saying that it's been 6 months since she posted that review and she hasn't said a thing, with the exception of the very next week saying after a less than awesome experience with Slayfire, and that after that she hasn't mentioned Slayfire once and she doesn't understand why this is being brought up now, and basically says she's not going to talk about it again. From here is where things get a little unnecessarily intense, in my opinion. I mentioned earlier that both of these people are known for being kind of snarky and combative and very much like a stand-on business type of person when they think they're in the right. For me, I would chalk this up to you guys have like a fundamental difference of opinion on whether or not this is cosmetic grade, and that has cascading effects on how you feel about each other and this interaction. Because if I try and put myself into each person's shoes, right, and I'm Slayfire and I truly believe that this is cosmetic grade glitter, then I understand why I acted the way I did in this exchange. And similarly, if I put myself into Jenna's shoes and I truly believe that this isn't, and that this person is marketing this unethically, then I understand why I acted the way I did. Now, throughout this whole thing, there's been kind of a bunch of back and forth between the two communities in support of whomever it is that they like. Both sides accusing each other of deleting comments. I don't think that matters at all. You are allowed to delete comments on videos on your own page, period. You do not need a reason. You are allowed to block people from your own page, period. You do not need a reason. After Jenna posted her video, both creators continued to reply to comments and, you know, engage with people over this within their own pages. Slayfire again accused Jenna of lying about various things, including in the interaction between them. Slayfire says that they never reached out to Jenna about marketing their products as sensory friendly and says that's a lie from Jenna. Jenna didn't have screenshots of that particular DM conversation, but had screenshots of a communication between her and Slayfire where she references that they reached out to her about marketing and they seemed confused about it in a comment section. But clearly at that time, which was before Jenna's actual review was posted, she thought that Slayfire had reached out to her about that. So whether it's true or not, Jenna thought, and it explains explains why she would feel the way she did going into the review she did for the glitters. And for what it's worth, actually, the "we'll see" comment that Slayfire mentioned in their video from Jenna is in this screenshot, and it to me reads as playful, like, yeah, we'll see how it goes, like that kind of thing, not like ominous. I'm not entirely sure why, but Slayfire also felt that there was something about the DMs that Jenna was lying about, so they posted the entirety of the DMs to their story. This included an uncensored screenshot of Jenna's phone number. Now, I don't believe that was maliciously done. I think that it's a reflection of the fact that Slayfire is very, very upset about this and has a lot of emotions still wrapped up in it. But it doesn't matter. That is not okay under any circumstances. Point blank, period. And it was reportedly up for hours. Jenna found out because someone actually texted her. Thankfully, it wasn't someone malicious, and I have not seen any acknowledgement of that mistake or apology for that from Slayfire. And then the latest I've seen is that Slayfire is claiming that they've contacted or are in the process of contacting a lawyer over lies that Jenna has told about them as a brand. I personally haven't seen anything from Jenna that I would consider to be legally actionable, but I am not aware. This was incredibly messy. This has been one of the most difficult videos I've ever had to film. I think I have 3 separate parts that are at the 10-minute max, and I am going to have to figure out how to edit them together, so if stuff's missing, that's why. I think both of these people have merit in the arguments that they are making. I think between the two of them, there is too much bad blood, and they just need to separate and be separated. I do have to say, though, that as a brand, I expect a lot more from Slayfire than I do from an influencer or just a content creator. Even the best possible faith assumptions of how Slayfire came into this and why they did the things they did does not change the fact that they doxed a customer to thousands and thousands of followers of theirs. Because Jenna bought those glitters. She didn't get them as PR. That was literally a paying customer. And even if it wasn't, even if this wasn't a brand, if I dox someone that I'm mad at, I'm gonna get rightfully torn to shreds for it. Even if it was done by accident because I was so mad because I thought someone was lying about me that I wanted to post our DMs and it accidentally had the phone number in there, which again is my best faith assumption of what happened there. It's not acceptable. Anyway, I'm glad these people are separated. I hope they never talk again, and I hope that everyone involved has learned something about how they might be able to approach conflict in the future in a slightly more productive way, hopefully. Excellent question, and the answer is for this video. Hello and welcome back to Niche Tea, where we talk about drama happening in communities you may not be a part of. Last time we talked about a bit of an ethical tussle that happened in the glitter community between 2 people, and it seems to be pretty much concluded, even though it didn't really get resolved, but I think that's for the best and we can all move forward. Today we're talking about a situation that's been going on for a long time with a content creator that I genuinely love, and so it's making me kind of upset. There is a ton of information and a ton of history, but I will not be speeding this up, so I'm just going to cover what I can in the 10 minutes I have. This person is a YouTube content creator and his name is Primink. Primink has been a creator on YouTube for about 5 years, and his content is video essay style, similar in nature to this. He picks a topic and he kind of deep dives into it a little bit, but it's not hour-plus long videos that are more common now. They're like usually 10 to 30 minutes, somewhere in there. He talks about a pretty wide range of stuff. It's not like just current events or just super niche stuff. I would say the through line is just stuff he thinks is fun to talk about, and so he wants to talk about it, and that comes through so clearly in the videos. I absolutely love listening to him. Like, even if there was a video on a topic that I already knew a ton about, I would always watch his and I would always be entertained because it's just genuinely so fun to listen to his stuff. And for what it's worth, he does find really unique stuff sometimes. He made a video on Joe Exotic a full year before Tiger King came out. Anyway, he's fantastic. I highly encourage everyone to go check his stuff out and subscribe to him. And if you don't believe me, believe the fact that 1 million people subscribed to him in like a year, I want to say. That's how good it is. But despite this meteoric rise that he had on the platform, about 4 years ago, he kind of just disappeared. And a few weeks ago, he posted a video talking about what had been going on, and that's what we're here to talk about. Because in addition to this being egregious on its own, it's bigger than just him. Who we're actually going to talk about is Lillee Jean. Real fast, before I go any further, you know the drill. I'm kind of co-adopting a family from another creator as part of Operation Olive Branch because my previous family, we did reach the goal for. Thank you so, so much. I would really appreciate it if people would go check out Colleen's page because she's the person I'm kind of stealing this from, which she's been very cool about. But in the interest of minimizing the number of clicks to get there, I'm also going to put the GoFundMe in my own profile. This is in support of a team of artists and their families. It's 15 people total. They're raising money together because they've been sticking together to try and help each other. This is money just to get them and their families safe. They're even offering incentives in terms of custom commissions in the GoFundMe, which kind of makes me want to cry, but if it works, cool. If you are able to donate, that would be amazing, but I completely understand. If not, if you would consider boosting, that would also be hugely, hugely appreciated. So, what happened? About 4 years ago, Primink uploaded a video to his channel about an influencer named Lillee Jean. Lillee Jean is somebody who has over 1 million followers on Instagram and at the time professed to be a beauty influencer. And Primink's video was pretty much just, hey, did you know this person exists? Probably not, because it's very likely she buys her followers. I'm not gonna go through the whole video because I really want you to go to Primink's channel and subscribe to him and watch all of his stuff, including that video, because again, it's only 20 minutes long. But basically he goes through all the evidence he has for why he's pretty confident that this is not real engagement or following that she's getting. Beyond the obvious, no one seems to know who she is. I do want to call out two things though that are pretty funny that have been covered by a lot of people that seem to be, in my mind, as somebody, like if you're trying to do this, these are very egregious lies to try and tell. And it was pretty quickly discovered that she allegedly photoshopped herself into a picture that was originally of Katy Perry. And the other was that she claimed she got the cover of Teen Vogue and like posted a cover with her on it. They don't print and haven't since like 2017. So girl. But the reality of it is this in itself is functionally harmless. This is clearly something that's very important to her and her mom. We're going to get into that. And even if every allegation against her is true, that everything she posts is fake, that her mom is helping spread these lies, that she's claiming she has all these sponsorships and she does, like, it literally just doesn't matter. There's a bit of an argument that people who are legitimately trying to break into, for example, the beauty influencer world are being hindered by people like Lillee Jean, but reality is, no, they're not. There might be a few instances where people just throw her affiliate codes or do whatever, but like CoverGirl is not going to sign Lillee Jean because of what's going on. They're going to look into her, they're going to realize what the situation is, if that's what's happening, and they're not going to move forward. Though I believe she did actually post a video with her mom where her mom's telling her she got a CoverGirl deal. Anyway, so a few weeks ago, after posting maybe 2 videos in the last 4 years, Primink posts an update to that and is basically like, ever since I posted that Lillee Jean video, I have been under a relentless harassment campaign by Lillee Jean and her mom. That alone, if true, but I do believe personally, is already not okay. But by looking into this even a little bit, the lengths with which the two of them are willing to go to try and scrub any negativity relating to Lillee Jean from the internet is beyond the pale. Here's like a high-level summary of things that I found that people have alleged against Lillee Jean and her mother. They copyright strike almost any video they can find of Lillee Jean on YouTube. More on that in a second. They allegedly have a ton of alts they will use to harass people in videos where they can't get it taken down. They get people's tweets pulled down for copyright or for abuse or harassment, whatever. They report everything everywhere, basically. They reported so many posts about Lillee Jean in the YouTube drama subreddit that a mod had to come in and be like, you can't post about this anymore, we're gonna lose the sub. They used to allegedly actively harass on different social media platforms people who are talking about them, for example, Primink. They delete, so it's very hard to catch it. If you go to their actual social profiles for Lillee and her mom, it's just promotion of Lillee, that's all. But you can find screenshots people have taken from when they have posted in anger, and you can see some of the things that they've said, allegedly, threatening to and or actually suing people, reporting them to the police, reporting them to the FBI, all kinds of stuff like that. Accusing people of everything under the sun, from bullying to anti-Semitism because she's Jewish, to stalking and actual crimes, like everything. Again, this is simply for calling someone a fake influencer. And then, most egregiously, full-on doxing. This is going to bring us back to the YouTube copyright strikes. Something that YouTube has which allows it to operate the way that it does, it could not function without it, is called safe harbor status. The way this is relevant to this discussion is specific to how they handle copyright disputes. In order to maintain safe harbor status, which prevents them from being sued by individual people over, say, somebody loading their own content onto the platform, YouTube is not allowed to say, oh, this is copyright violation, this isn't copyright violation. They can't do that. So instead, what happens is they just act as facilitators to help people kind of deal with it within legal means. So if I go onto YouTube and I say, this person stole my content, I can file a copyright takedown notice. If done correctly, once that's done, the video has to come down. Then YouTube sends a notice to the person who uploaded the video saying this person has filed a copyright strike against you. You have a certain amount of time to file a counterclaim. And then from there, basically the original person who made the claim has to either take it to court or let it go and the video goes back up. Now, in theory, this should be fine. If you are using something in what's called fair use, then they can't take it to court. Fair use is a whole other conversation, but in summary, I am allowed to talk about Lillee Jean. I'm allowed to show screenshots of her public profiles, etc. People are also allowed to talk about the video and content that she's uploaded and allowed to show clips from it as long as they have enough commentary and stuff on top of it to make it transformative. So in theory, at best, they're going to get these videos taken down for a little bit of time and it's whatever, they're going to go back up. But Lillee Jean and her mom have been accused a lot of weaponizing this process for a number of reasons, but most critically to get the personal information of the people who are making videos about Lillee Jean. Because if someone files a copyright claim against my video and I want to counter it so that my video comes back up because I know that it's fair use, as part of that process, I have to give them information that would allow them to legally sue me in court. That's part of what YouTube has to allow in order to be safe harbor. So I have to give them my full legal name and my address. And allegedly, at this point in their campaign of trying to get everyone to stop talking about them, they're at the point where they are utilizing this process to get this information to actively dox multiple YouTube creators. They have allegedly done this to Primink in multiple places, of course. Another YouTuber named Curtis Price was also allegedly fully doxed himself and his whole family by Lillee Jean's mom. They are allegedly doing every single thing they possibly can to anyone they think they can who ever talks about Lillee. And I'm really proud that Primink, who I believe is fairly young, has finally felt like courage enough to come forward on both Twitter and YouTube primarily and be like, hey, this isn't okay and I need help. Because at the very least, one of the alleged doxings was done by Lillee Jean's YouTube in a YouTube video of Primink. That is an absolute violation of terms of service. And Primink has been desperately trying to get the attention of YouTube on Twitter to make them do something. He's got over 1 million subs and they're still not helping him. It's been 4 years. Now, I will say that after, I believe, Nicholas Diorio got involved, Team YouTube did finally seem to respond to Primink, so maybe something is happening, but I have not seen anything meaningful change. So I really want to encourage you, if you haven't seen anything from Primink, at the very least, go check him out. Go watch all of his stuff. I want him to make a lot of money, and genuinely, you're going to enjoy it. But if you also feel comfortable, please go follow him on Twitter. Please retweet his stuff. Please tag other really big YouTubers. I really want to help him. Do not harass Lillee Jean or her mom. They can live in their little fiefdom. They truly do not matter. At this point, I am upset with YouTube for not doing what they need to keep their creators safe. Without the creators, these platforms are nothing. Please go show Primink lots of love. He needs it. Hello and welcome back to Niche Tea, where we talk about drama happening in communities you may not be a part of. Last time we talked about the 4-year-long battle that YouTube creator Primink has been dealing with because he made a video that got like 10 million views about how a mother and daughter were basically faking the daughter's social presence and buying her followers, and they have been relentlessly, allegedly, going after him in every way humanly possible since then. Since I made that video, another very large YouTube creator named Mudahar has made a video about this as well. Regardless about how you may feel about Mudahar, I know he can be very polarizing. I would highly encourage people to go check this video out, watch it, engage with it, like it, that kind of stuff. If only because by engaging with it and the video getting larger, that makes it more likely that YouTube will pay attention just generally because of how big he is himself. But also, the better that video does, the more likely other very large YouTubers will make videos about it. Usually stuff happens if it gets to that level, so that's the best option if we want to get Primink some actual help. I also want to really encourage you again to go check out Primink himself. He truly is so funny. I love watching him, and I was devastated when he stopped uploading. Today, we're going back into the convention world because apparently 2024 is just the year to beat DashCon when it comes to conventions. Talking about Pokeverse in the Philippines. Background is really simple. Pokeverse is a fan convention that took place, as I said, in the Philippines. It's a by fans, for fans kind of thing. People are naturally a little bit more wary when it comes to fan conventions for reasons I think you might expect. The biggest being, of course, that they're unrelated to the actual companies that hold the IP for whatever the thing is the convention is centering on. In this case, Pokemon. So you're going to see a lot of like close enough imagery and wording because they have to be careful from a copyright standpoint. But also, anything organized by fans means that there's very likely less organization and significantly less funding behind it. And that can lead to chaos. Quickly before I continue, I want to say thank you so much to everyone who donated to the GoFundMe I was supporting as part of Operation Olive Branch. I've adopted another one alongside another creator, and this one is supporting a team of artists and their families. It's 15 people in total. There's been a little bit of traction, and I am so grateful. There's still a long way to go. These people's homes have been completely destroyed at this point. You can find all the resources on my profile. If you do have any ability to support, that would be hugely appreciated. So, what happened? Pokeverse Philippines ran this past weekend, May 31st through June 2nd. 2 days ago, a Twitter user named Rita, who attended the event, posted a mega thread of everything they experienced while there because of how upsetting this experience was to them and how much they were kind of blown away by the shenanigans going on. And that thing is currently sitting at like nearly 7 million views. The response to this thread has been hilarious. Immediately, comparisons to DashCon, specifically the ball pit, the classic con failure imagery. Having now gone through the entire thread and any other offshoots that are included in that and any articles related and Discord and Facebook and like literally anything I can find, while there were absolutely issues, and we will go through that, to me, when I think about some of the other things that I've covered, like Readers Take Denver or even the Wonka thing, this isn't quite that bad. It's not great, don't get me wrong. I would still put it on the list of shitty cons from 2024. I would just put it probably lower on the list than most of the others that I've covered. So let's go through it. Let's start with the good. There were things that were done well, and I want to give credit where credit's due. One is that it had a real venue in a real convention space. Good job. A lot of people don't make that. Two, and for me the biggest standout, is the headliners. The first being Veronica Taylor, who was the voice of Ash in the original English version of the series in 1998 through like 2006. That's cool. And the other was Jason Page, the guy who sung the Pokemon song. That's cool. The person who made this make a thread, Rita, actually won a contest that had been previously held and came in second. The top 3 people got free entry to the convention and got to sing with Jason Page. It was a singing contest. That's very cool. And then the third thing I want to put solidly in the good category is, to me, this was a good faith effort to put on a good event. When I looked into that Willy Wonka event that happened earlier in the year, that was a scam. That was, let's lure people in with misleading imagery and an idea of what's going to happen and then give them something that's as cheap as humanly possible that we were able to make. This is not that, and that's why I wouldn't categorize it the same way. Again, I'm not saying that there weren't issues. There absolutely were. But to me, these are issues born from inexperience and are things that can be easily rectified for future iterations if they want to continue holding this in future years. So we've covered the good things. Let's move on to the not so good things. Starting with the things I think very legitimately need to be addressed if they ever want to hold this again. The absolute biggest thing is organization and communication. Like, so many of the issues were related to that specifically. People who had comp tickets like Rita didn't get them until midnight the night before. I want to say every day had a delayed opening, and at least one of them, they didn't notify people until they were already there. So people had to wait just to do nothing for an additional literally 2 hours before they could go in. The ticketing process was not at all clear, both for the convention goers and the staff, it seems like. Several people said that finding where you needed to be to get what so that you could actually get in was very confusing. Rita said the wristbands for admission weren't given out properly by the people at ticketing working the event. Usually you can attend either an entire convention or individual days if you want to, and that was the case here. So you need uniquely identifiable passes for each day so that staff can keep an eye on who's got what pass and make sure that like somebody who bought for Friday isn't still here on Sunday. For Pokeverse, they used wristbands with different colors. It was supposed to be a different color for each day, and that got completely lost. Like, Rita got 2 of the same color in there. By day 3, they ran out of wristbands, so they just started using stars on people's hands. It's just disorganized. Leading up to the event, the map setup kept changing and people were confused by that. And then day of, the map didn't fully match what people were seeing in the event, so they were confused by that. Rita, who was there to sing with Jason Page, was very confused about where they were supposed to be when, wasn't given any rehearsal with Jason, wasn't told they had to perform multiple times, and was very thrown off by that. Vendors for Artist Alley were given little to no communication leading up to the event and at the event. The schedule kept changing, both because of the late starts for some days, but also events were removed and added, and it was very confusing. There was a game that people in Artist Alley were supposed to be playing, and like none of them knew. Someone from staff had to like walk back over with people who were playing it to explain to the vendors what was going on and what they had to do. It's just messy. Second big issue, there was clearly a big lack of staff, specifically coordinators and operations. You need a ton of that for these types of events, and having that would have made things a lot easier. At one point, Rita claims they had to act as staff to help with some of the line management for one of the events, and that's insane. Third big issue for me is related to promotional materials, and specifically referring to 2 things that were mentioned in the mega thread. One is that generally there were people going around filming the whole thing a lot, like intrusively, filming people without consent, filming unaccompanied children, filming in areas where people were changing into their cosplays because there wasn't a private area for people to do that. See point 1 on organization. In that game I mentioned with the vendors in the Artist Alley, it's usually a game where you get like a stamp or a signature for buying a certain amount from each vendor with the goal of, you know, getting sales for these people who've paid to be there. But in this one, apparently instead you had to post a bunch of stuff to social media. So you had to do promotion for the event. I don't like that. And then the fourth big thing was cost. This was pretty expensive, especially for the Philippines. If you wanted a VIP pass, it was $100 a day. Generally, the VIP pass gave you merch, front row seats to panels, and photo ops and signatures from the headliners. But still, according to Rita, it's about twice the cost of conventions normally in the area. The big thing, though, is that they specifically say that part of the reason that the fee is so high is because they have to pay for these international headliners to come in. Veronica did it for free.
Why the fuck you lying?
So those are the bad, shady things that need to be fixed. Then we have things that are funny or not a big deal to me. First up, the venue, way too big for this. Too big for the number of attendees, too big for the number of vendors, too big for the number of attractions, just too big. Probably too expensive, which is probably why the tickets were too expensive. This is probably why you're seeing rooms full of random inflatables that have nothing to do with Pokemon, and why the place looks so goddamn empty in every shot. My guess is they dramatically overestimated the attendance. This is why when you put on these types of events, they recommend you start small. I will say I'm very much enjoying the memeing and clowning going on with the pictures though, so silver lining. We also have Ravioli Man. This is a guy reportedly walking around smelling absolutely awful, holding a jar full of ravioli that was covered in sauce and like licking the sauce off of the jar. I'm sure this man was annoying and disconcerting to a few at least, but he's a troll. He literally wrote Ravioli Man on his shirt. He's just an asshole. Welcome to conventions. Rita did say that it took a while for security to get this guy out, probably because he wasn't a present threat, but I can see that being annoying. It's pretty funny though. And then lastly, there's a ton of concern about these Make-A-Wish kids who were there because it was unsafe for them to be there. Being at the convention was very likely their wish. It's something they choose to do alongside their parents. Yes, there's obviously a risk to them that they are fully informed before they go. In the US, apparently travel accounts for nearly 80% of wishes. More than half specifically wish to go to Disney, which is way more crowded than this was. Those kids probably came because they're Pokemon fans and they wanted to meet the headliners. The only thing realistically to be sad about there is that it probably wasn't as fun of an event as it could have been for them. So all in all, I do believe that this event is salvageable if they put it on again. It's just a question of whether or not they can implement the feedback for next time. Hello and welcome back to Niche Tea, where we talk about drama happening in communities you may not be a part of. I went to a summer party for my company yesterday, so that's why my voice sounds like a frog. I apologize. Last time we talked about the latest in this series of not great conventions happening in 2024, this time in the Pokemon community, specifically Pokeverse 2024 in the Philippines. Today we're moving back into the Genshin Impact community, which I have covered before. And actually, this story is a sequel/finale to the previous situation that I covered in this series. I know it's annoying, but you can watch the previous video by following the comment I'm replying to here. I highly recommend if you really want all the details to get fully up to speed with what we're about to talk about. For those who really don't want to do that, understood, here's the 30,000 foot overview. Genshin Impact is a game that's gained a lot of popularity over the last few years, and specifically there are people who have made their careers out of making content related to the game, playing it, talking about it, reviewing it, etc. The game itself does not actually matter for the story. The game is made by a company called MiHoYo, and they keep doing shit that's pissing people off. Earlier in the year, they did some shit that pissed people off, and it set off this whole chain of events in the Genshin content creator sphere that's centered on 3 specific people primarily. The first person is a guy named Tectone. He likes to stir up a lot of drama and shit in between people. He likes to be very emotionally charged in his content. He clickbaits a lot, allegedly. He's repeatedly accused of creating and egging on drama so that he can make content about it and then monetize that content. And specifically relating to this situation, earlier in the year, he kind of started up this campaign where he was calling out creators whom he felt were working directly with MiHoYo because the company continues to screw things up and upset players. But then from his perspective, there are a lot of content creators who are still being very favorable and not criticizing them for their missteps, and he sees that as like them being shills. The second person is a guy named Atsu, who is another Genshin content creator who is fairly well known for having social connections to MiHoYo. He doesn't work there. He's generally understood to benefit very greatly from this connection he has to MiHoYo, and also to have a very kind of like select specific group of friends he hangs with, generally referred to as a clique. In February, as Tectone was getting people riled up, at one point Atsu came in and tweeted at Tectone this whole long thing about trying to quell things down and cut the drama, and specifically said to Tectone, I know there's somebody who's telling you things about me that aren't true. Come talk to me about it. Enter the third person, a guy named Braxophone, also a Genshin content creator. Braxophone and Tectone are friends, and Atsu was referring to Braxophone when he was talking to Tectone and saying, I know someone's saying shit about me to you. It's not true. Braxophone ended up coming out with like an 8-page Google document and specifically added Atsu and was like, I know that you don't like me and you never have. I've been trying to make friends because this is my career and I want to network, but you're actively blacklisting me from events and from things like partnerships that I could be doing with MiHoYo, and you're ruining my career, basically. This then caused a bunch of other people to come out and talk about their issues they had with Atsu, but then also other people came out in defense of Atsu, and everybody just went like this. And then it kind of just fizzled out and ended. Atsu did put out a like 55-page document trying to defend himself, but it really didn't get much traction because because there seemed to be a lot of ill will toward Atsu, just generally, that everybody just got out and it didn't really matter what his response was. Okay, so we're caught up. Real fast, before we go any further, I am still supporting Operation Olive Branch. I would really appreciate it if you are able to potentially contribute to supporting a team of artists who are looking to get to safety alongside their families. It's 15 people in total. They could really use any help they can get. There's been some good traction over the last few weeks. If we can keep that going, I would be super, super appreciative. If you are able to support, that would be amazing. If not, if you're open to sharing, I'd super appreciate it. So, what happened? This time. All of that stuff happened in February, and from there, things pretty much died down. Until 5 days ago, Atsu came on Twitter to say that he's quitting this entirely. He's lost everything in his life, and he posted another 36-page Google Doc kind of airing out all of his grievances. The key points from the document are, one, that he's lost his entire career due to what happened in February. His views are down, he's not getting anything he used to, and it's not worth him continuing to do it. Two is that he found out his wife has been having an affair and they are getting divorced, so his marriage is also now over. He doesn't blame this on anybody involved in this specific thing. He's just explaining what's going on in his life. Three is touching back on some of the allegations from February, and there are some interesting points here. Most interestingly, he alleges that Braxophone does have a contract with MiHoYo. As a reminder, that was kind of the whole thing, was that Braxophone was saying that because Atsu didn't like him and Atsu was so connected with MiHoYo, Atsu was actively blacklisting him and affecting his career. If he has a contract with MiHoYo, then that's not true. He then proceeds to, one by one, acknowledge everyone who came out during the previous thing. He writes open letters to multiple of his friends saying that he's disappointed in the fact that they didn't defend him, basically. He apologizes to a whole bunch of people, and I think these are people who maybe came out with stories about him previously. He says some more stuff to Braxophone directly. It's fairly cordial. To Tectone, he's like, you fucking suck, basically. Kind of agree. And he included 2 open letters to drama channels, Asmongold and Some Ordinary Gamers, Mudahar, and basically admonishes them for not allegedly fact-checking the story before they covered it, thus contributing to his downfall. So he drops this document. He and one of his former friends named Dish have a little bit of a back and forth, and then he pieces out. The back and forth between Atsu and Dish is so weird to read. They're very much talking around the things they feel and prefacing everything with I care about you and this makes me sad and I don't hold any bitterness, and then they're like, fuck you. So that seemed like that. But then Braxophone comes back with another Google document. This one's only 7 pages long, thank God. Oh, honestly, I don't think it's a great response. Right off the bat, on page 1, he says, and I quote, "I'm not going to sit here and act like everything I said in my initial document is true." What? Can we get more info on that? No? Okay. He does not expound on that. At no point does he say, here are the things that I said before that are not true, whether because of a lie or a misunderstanding by me. He then includes this really sassy pop quiz, which is really funny, don't get me wrong. From that and the rest of the documents, the key points are, 1, he does not deny having a contract with MiHoYo and heavily implies that he does have one, that it's under NDA, and so he can't talk about it, and that part of the NDA is that he can't acknowledge that he has the contract. Which, fine, but why did you go out of your way to say you were being blacklisted with the company then? You cannot be blacklisted and employed by them at the same time. And yes, the specific words used matter, because now as a third party, I feel manipulated by Braxophone. Because now the whole thing changes to not you weren't able to do your job or make your living or whatever. You just wanted more, and you saw Atsu as somebody who was able to get more for people he liked, and you knew he didn't like you, whether that was justified or not. He again brings up Atsu's connections. Apparently one of Atsu's very good friends lives with someone who works at MiHoYo. I don't know that Atsu has directly denied having connections there, but even if he has, I think generally people acknowledge that he does. So for me, this was less of a bomb drop, I guess, in the document, which it seemed like to Brax, it kind of was considered that, and there might be something I'm missing there. 3 is that Atsu doesn't like Braxophone and has told his friends he doesn't want to be at places where Braxophone's going to be, like events and stuff. This is also, I believe, understood to be true. 4 is that he's generally a very manipulative person and likes to victimize himself a lot. And then 5 is that Atsu's downfall in viewership was because Genshin generally is getting less views and less interest from people, not because of anything that Braxophone did. Then, although I don't know if this happened before or after Braxophone came out with his document, Tectone made a video reacting to Atsu's document. There were 2 key things I took away from that. One is that allegedly 13 other creators had come out after Braxophone to talk about their bad experiences with Atsu and being manipulated or just feeling like he treated them badly. Then 2, according to Tectone, it was always understood that there's no proof that Atsu was ever able to blacklist anybody from actual engagements with MiHoYo, like paid contracts. What? Isn't that why we're here? So just to summarize it all, Atsu has very good connections to MiHoYo and is able to get for himself and those he likes good contracts. Braxophone, it seems, is also able to get contracts. They either are not as good as the one Atsu's can get, or he is under the perception that that's true. Atsu has said he keeps a tight circle because he doesn't want to be taken advantage of by people who just want to further their careers. Braxophone attempted to befriend Atsu multiple times and it didn't work out due to awkwardness or miscommunication or whatever. Braxophone wasn't invited to a specific event party that keeps getting referenced because he upset the host, who was not Atsu. Atsu talks to his friends who are also Genshin content creators about not liking Braxophone. Braxophone believes due to this, he's not invited to more industry events. Braxophone believes but cannot prove that Atsu has the power to blacklist creators with MiHoYo. That seems to be the end of it. Everyone says they're moving on. Everyone seems to be very sick of this whole thing and really wishes these guys would have dealt with it in DMs. My personal opinion is Atsu's probably manipulative. Too many people have said so for it to not be true. He basically takes no accountability for anything. Braxophone at this point comes off as really entitled to me. I understand why Brax might feel bitter and disadvantaged. Just because Atsu is connected doesn't mean that he has this responsibility to give an even playing field to everybody. He doesn't have to be your friend or like you, and he is allowed to vent about you to his friends. Shit like this happens at companies all the time. Him not actively going out of his way to help you is not the same as him blacklisting you. You can't equate those. And it makes you an even bigger manipulator than you accuse him of being. I think all major players lost in this. The general public is very much over it. One thing most people do seem to agree on, though, is that Tectone is an asshole. Hello and welcome back to Niche Tea, where we talk about drama happening in communities you may not be a part of. Last time we talked about the Genshin Impact content creator sphere, and specifically the part 2 to the content creator, I'm going to call it a squabble, that's been happening since about February. Today we're going to talk about something that was brought to me directly, and it's pretty small in the grand scheme of things, but it is fairly niche, and it just sent me down this whole rabbit hole of stuff that I just kept looking into, and I'm at a point where I'm just like, you should know this too. We're talking about the traditional commercial art community, and specifically an artist named Stuart Semple. Stuart Semple is an artist by most people's definition. He's somebody who makes art, puts it in galleries, sells it for millions of dollars apparently. But in a lot of ways, he seems to be more well known from what I can see for his activism, which he does express through art. Some of this activism is traditional. For example, he is an ambassador for a mental health advocacy group called Mind out of the UK. But a lot of it is art related. Most specifically, he's pretty well known for going against any situation where a company, a person, etc. tries to patent or restrict access to a specific color, material, anything like that. For example, he made a dupe version of Tiffany Blue, which is officially trademarked by Tiffany & Co. He's done that with several other colors like the Barbie pink. And another instance was he made his own version of Pantone colors called Free Tone colors that would work within Adobe when Pantone and Adobe broke up in 2022. The background on that being that Pantone colors are a set of fixed colors that always print the exact same way, no matter where you print it from and no matter what system you're looking at it in, because a lot of times there's a problem where you'll look at a color on a screen and it'll print differently because things get confused when you go from screen to printer, and also things look differently depending on the screen you're looking at. So the goal of having the Pantone colors is that you always know exactly what it's going to look like when it prints. Pantone and Adobe fell out with one another in 2022. So if you were using Adobe, you couldn't access the Pantone colors in Adobe to build things. And so he made this version called Freetone, which mimicked them, or at least a good set of them, so that people could use those and basically get what they needed to get, and he made it free. Stuff like that I personally find to be extremely cool. The thing is, though, he seems to have a little bit of an overly petty or retributive penchant to him. So for example, with the Freetone colors I was just telling you about, he barred anyone who worked or was affiliated with Pantone or Adobe from accessing it. I'm honestly not sure how he did that, but that's what it says. The other thing, which is the much more famous thing that he's known for, is his beef with Anish Kapoor. Anish Kapoor is another millionaire artist. He is a sculptor, and you would know him as the guy who made the Bean in Chicago. He very famously bought exclusive rights to the color Vanta Black, which is the deepest, darkest black pigment that has ever been created. It absorbs like almost all light that touches into it. It's pretty crazy looking stuff. This, of course, meant no one else could use Vanta Black, which a lot of people were rightfully pissed about, but none so much as Stuart Semple. Stuart did a lot of things of retaliation to this. He made a pigment called the Pinkest Pink and made it so that anyone in the world was allowed to buy it except Anish Kapoor. Of course, Anish still got his hands on it somehow, and he posted a picture of himself with it flipping off the camera. But then also fairly recently, Stuart Semple, I think, legally changed his name to Anish Kapoor, specifically so that he could go and use it. Like, oh look, I can go do it now, right? Which is insane, but also hilarious and a commitment to the bit that I can appreciate. Anyway, all to say, he's a pretty reactive dude, and that's where the issue comes in. Very quickly before we go on, we've made really good progress in raising money for this team of artists that I am supporting who are looking to get them and their families, a total of 15 people, to a place of safety and give them the resources they need to be able to survive. I am hugely thankful to all of you. We've raised like $7,000 since the time I started promoting this, and I know this means the world to them. If you are able to donate anything, that would be hugely appreciated. For those unable to donate, if you are able to help promote and share, that would be amazing as well. Thank you so much. So, what happened? Stuart Semple is kind of all over the place. He does a lot of stuff. Most recently, he started promoting a product that he's going to be selling and he is crowdfunding for called Burnerphone. The idea behind this seems to be tied to mental health and the idea that smartphones are a huge cause of anxiety and depression in a lot of people today. I don't think anyone debates that. It makes sense that he would continue to be supporting mental health causes as he seems to have been very invested in doing so in the past. And some amount of proceeds from Burnerphone will be going to mental health support programs. However, when Stuart started posting about it, there were a few things about it that threw people off, most predominantly of which was that the promotional images for the phone were clearly made from AI. There's been a lot, obviously, of AI integration into technology over the last couple of years, especially with the introduction of ChatGPT. Generative AI refers to programs where you put in a prompt and something is created out of it. This is where you get a lot of those wonky AI images that you see everywhere, usually on Facebook. Overly saturated, have an uncanny valley feel to them, and when you start to pay attention to little details, you notice things look really bad. There are a lot of reasons why people have issues with generative AI, but specifically for artists, there are two main issues. One is that these systems have to base the things that they're generating, the images that they're making, off of things that already exist, and the overwhelming majority of the time, they have taken those images that they're using to build their generative stuff from just the internet or things that they're able to find anywhere without any level of permission. They are stealing art from other artists. There is a very real chance that any artist that has made something commercially, that has made something that's gone online and gained any level of popularity, has been scraped and put into an AI engine without their permission, without royalties, without anything. So that's issue one. They're literally stealing from artists. Issue two is that this technology is expressly used to replace artists. Every time you see this used, it means that an artist was not paid instead. So by using it, you're stealing from artists so that you don't have to pay them in the future. It's a double fuck you. So like I said, people started calling him out on this, and this very clearly got to him very seriously. I don't have very many actual examples of anything because this man deletes comments faster than I can even capture them. But clearly he got a ton because at some point a guy named Sam also pointed this out and was like, hey, this sucks. And Stuart just kind of snapped. Stuart goes back and forth a bunch with Sam in his comments, trying to say that basically it's not art because it's just a rendering of a product. Therefore, it's not bad to use AI, which completely ignores the entire issue with AI that artists have, which I just explained. It seems Stuart only thinks it matters if somebody who is an artist uses AI and claims that they made it themselves and none of the other stuff. Anyway, they don't really get to a point of understanding at all. And you would think that that would be it. Again, this guy is a millionaire and is clearly very comfortable with the block and delete button, which I think is healthy. But instead, to Sam, he sends a DM that kind of rehashes all the same stuff and is like, why are you being mean to me? Then he goes over to Sam's Instagram profile and comments mean things on like every single post he's made over the last several weeks. This man is 43. Sam, who's a little blown away by this whole interaction, posts it on Reddit and it goes a little crazy. At least the initial post did. It unfortunately seems to have been taken down. I'm not sure why. After that, I assume Stuart started getting more comments on his Instagram about it, but again, I can't see any of it because he deletes them so fast. But he started posting a whole series of I'm just a human and I'm sad and I'm being bullied types of posts. It was pretty funny, actually. To be clear, do not harass this man. Let's be cool. He also allegedly justified himself to someone who asked him why he was being mean by saying Sam wrote these, but these look to be doctored, to me anyway. But admittedly, like, none of this would be an issue if you just listened to the feedback about the AI, especially as an artist, and then just not gone on a childish tantrum. So, and then people started looking more into the actual phone he's promoting, the Burnerphone, because it's not a real project. It's a crowdfunding thing for a phone that will theoretically be released in December. And the whole point that he has on his Indiegogo fundraiser for it is that he wanted to get a dumb phone for mental health purposes so he could disconnect from things like social apps, which clearly he does need to do, but that they were crazy expensive. Guess how much this one is? $200. And then people started talking about how he's done crowdfunding stuff in the past and just not delivered it. Last year, he apparently raised $180,000 crowdfunding to make a competitor to Adobe called Abode, because remember, he hates Adobe. And there had allegedly been no updates since. Though supposedly, right after somebody tweeted about that, he said that he did put an update in there and supposedly it's coming out in November of this year. But then you're telling me he has a phone that hasn't been made at all that needs to be out by the end of the year and an entire software that's meant to rival Adobe by November of this year? Okay. He also sells paint, as I mentioned before, and people have been chiming in to be like, by the way, I still haven't gotten my paint I bought from you yet. Not sensing a good amount of organization. As he's continued to get flack for treating Sam like shit on Instagram, he's started saying that he has apologized to Sam and shows a DM of him doing that, supposedly, and is alleging that Sam had been hounding him for weeks. But again, there's no evidence of that because he deletes everything, and also if he deletes everything, why didn't you just block him if that was true? I actually have an idea for a piece of performance art that Stuart could do, and that's where he would go to therapy for several years. He could write a book about it at the end if he needs to make money. That's fine. Hello and welcome back to Niche Tea, where we talk about drama happening in communities you may not be a part of. Last time we talked about the commercial art community and specifically the very reactive nature of a particular artist by the name of Stuart Semple. Today's episode is going to be a little bit similar to that in that there's a good amount of background that I have discovered through looking into this topic that is part of what I want to talk about. So it's almost just as much that as it is the thing that's happening currently. So just heads up, we're talking about the horse thing. The entire story centers on this one particular breed of horse. This breed of horse is called Przewalskis. This is how it's spelled. And the possessive is part of the name, it seems like. So it's like you'd say, I have a Przewalski's horse. My brain doesn't like any of it. More to the point, in the interest of showing mercy to editing me, who also has to go in and custom edit all of the captions every time, I'm not going to be saying the name that often. Again, heads up. So starting with background, these horses are unfortunately endangered and were actually about 70 years ago extinct in the wild and nearly totally extinct. In the wild, they originate back to Eastern Europe and Central Asia. They are commonly also called wild Mongolian horses. And I believe they're actually the only true wild breed of horses to still exist. This sent me down a whole separate thing on the differences between wild and feral animals. The terms wild and domesticated refer to the breed or the species as a whole, while feral and tame refers to the actual individual animal. So dogs as a species are domesticated, but you can still find feral dogs individually. That's not a wild dog, that's a feral domesticated dog. Whereas wolves are a wild species, but I guess theoretically, you could tame a wolf and make it a pet. I feel like I've seen movies about that. So generally when you think of wild horses nowadays, those are actually feral domesticated horses that like just escaped and ran away. But this specific horse breed is, again, I believe the last wild horse breed to exist. And as I mentioned before, in the mid-1900s, they nearly went fully extinct, with the last reported sighting of them in the wild at the time in 1969. However, since right about the end of World War II, people had started to notice like this is a problem, and so they had started to breed them in captivity. Then in 1977, in the Netherlands, a foundation for their preservation and protection was officially started, and that allowed for people across the world to connect with who had these horses so that they could, because you're talking about like there were a couple hundred of them. So getting them in contact with one another to help with breeding, hugely important. Not just for keeping them alive as a species, but also for preventing just raucous inbreeding. As of today, it looks like there are a little over 2,000 in total across the world, which I think technically takes them off the endangered species list, but they're still on the endangered species list. And the very cool thing about this, which has started in the 90s and has been continuing up through literally this month, is the ongoing effort to reintroduce this horse into the wild. Most of them have been reintroduced into wild areas of Mongolia and northern China. And the most recent set to be reintroduced were 6 mares and 1 stallion from various zoos across Europe, and they were reintroduced to the wilds of Kazakhstan. You're talking closer to even 80 years in total of work to bring this species back from the brink of extinction, and that is amazing to be able to say that they've done as much as they have. Now, because they are endangered and because there's so much effort going into their breeding and reintroduction, these horses are very specifically and heavily tracked. They're all registered in some way, and their movements are tracked as they travel across the world. Now, allegedly, in the last, I assume, few years, 4 of these horses were in the US, I assume for a breeding program, something like that. It is incredibly difficult to find any actual firsthand account of this happening, but everyone agrees that it happened, so okay. 4 of these horses that were being transferred in the US, 3 mares, 1 stallion, went missing. I don't know when, I don't know from where, I don't know exactly why they were here, I don't know who's responsible, I don't know anything. So that pretty much takes us through setup. We've got an incredibly rare breed of horse. It's tracked everywhere that it goes. They travel around so that they can do breeding because they're actively trying to repopulate this breed. 4 allegedly went missing in the United States, 1 male, 3 female, sometime somewhat recently, I would assume. Hello, really quickly before I continue, as you know, I am supporting Operation Olive Branch, and this is a group of artists who are with their families, a total of 15 people, hoping to raise some money so that they can get to a point of safety and so they are able to provide for themselves and their families. We've made some amazing progress in the time since I took this over. It was nearly 10,000 below this at that time. I'm so thankful. Thank you all. If you are able to donate anything or consider sharing, that would be amazing, and I would really greatly appreciate it. So, what happened? Earlier this month, a TikTok user named Kinsey, whose family seems to own a ranch or manage one, posted a video saying that they had found one of these horses at a kill shelter. Kinsey went on to say that they and their family saw pictures of this horse, which they have named Shrek, online, and they immediately recognized him as one of these horses, and so they went and got him immediately. They claim that after picking Shrek up, they put him in quarantine with a friend of theirs for about a month, and that he's since then been with them for about 2 months on their property. And they also claimed in this video that he was 100% purebred. They'd had him DNA tested. Kinsey then went on to say that they did contact the zoo and relevant officials, and they were told they could probably keep him. This really threw people off because they were like, what do you mean keep him? Because there are 2 main issues with that. First being that if he's purebred, then overwhelming odds would say he's the stud that went missing, and they're gonna need him back for breeding purposes, right? Like, I'm assuming he has an owner. I don't know if that gets voided out if you lose one for a long enough time. Like, if you lose your horse and it shows up like 5 years later somewhere else, like, is it still yours, or is there, I don't know. But especially in this particular case where there is a concerted ongoing effort to boost the population, like, what do you mean you're gonna keep it? The second issue is, to my understanding, these horses aren't tameable. Like, even in captivity, they are given a wide berth and left alone. They are not good pets. They're very aggressive, they're very territorial. So the idea of a random family, one comfortable with raising horses or not, which this family does seem to be comfortable with, having one of these horses is concerning to a lot of people. This started turning the tide of conversation a bit toward Kinsey about this horse. To make things worse, this was happening almost exactly at the same time that guy on Twitter found that fish in his yard and killed it. People were up in arms. I want to stop right now and say that Kinsey is, I believe, a minor. Do not harass them. Don't bother them. Their comments have had to be turned off on their page, and that sucks. They are not, I don't believe, the person in charge making the decisions about this horse. Leave them alone. Then it turned out there was another potential one of these horses at a rescue in Utah. Lazy Bee Equine Rescue and Sanctuary had a mare that they suspected might be one of these surrendered to them also in early June. They had actually posted about the mare a few days before Kinsey posted about the stud, and then when they found out that the stud was being named Shrek, they decided to name the mare Fiona, and everybody just immediately died and dove into this headfirst. However, since they only got Fiona this month, they're still in the process of getting her DNA tested, so they don't know for sure if she's 100% purebred or not. That process takes like 6 to 8 weeks apparently. Now, I've seen people bring up that this puts Kinsey's story into question because Kinsey claims that they had the DNA test already done and that would be too fast, but Kinsey claims that they picked up the horse 3 months ago, Shrek, so that would give them enough time to do the DNA test, and my assumption is they knew or assumed it was possibly one of these horses at pickup, so they probably did it right away. But people are now wanting to see more official stuff, like the official results or just something else to believe, because I guess they just don't believe that Kinsey's telling the truth. Or they're upset because they do believe Kinsey's telling the truth and are like, why would you keep this horse then? And basically don't believe that if this horse is legitimately purebred, that no one in an official capacity from the government or zoos or preservation societies would come and claim it. The Lazy Bee Rescue in Utah, which is the best name ever, by the way, have said that they're obviously still waiting on the DNA test, and at that point they'll get in contact with zoos, etc., to get this horse to the place where it needs to be. And they are raising money both for Fiona as well as just generally they are a rescue, and so they probably rely really heavily on donations. So if you are someone who is interested in this and would like to support them, I'll put their information up here. But that's actually pretty much it as of now. Like I mentioned, Kinsey turned off their comments, I assume because they were getting a lot of harassment from people. Do not harass them. Both groups have been in contact with one another, and they have said that they aren't going to be united reuniting Fiona and Shrek. I'm not entirely sure why, but it just isn't going to work out, and people are quite devastated. While Lazy B waits for the DNA tests to come back, a lot of people are speculating whether or not it's a purebred version of this horse, a hybrid version of this horse, or a similar looking horse called a hinny. Most of the skeptical people think that both horses are probably hinnies because it just wouldn't make sense to have this incredibly rare breed show up in such random ways. But I guess we'll see.